Welcome back, everybody, to the Jocks of All Trades podcast. I'm Kyle, and today we're going to continue on our tour of the NFL offseason. Today we're going to talk about the AFC West, the Chiefs, the Chargers, the Raiders, and the Broncos. Before we dive into that, guys, let's hear from our contributors and sponsors.
Fresh Cuts is our amazing sponsor who has been with us since 2020. Fresh Cuts is the local barbershop hangout in Marion, Indiana. If you're looking for a full-service barber with excellent cuts and a welcoming atmosphere, contact Caleb Kemper for an appointment time through www.freshcutsbarbershop.com. Mondays are the best days to get in, although he has plenty of time slots available. And if you happen to miss us live, you'll be hearing us in the shop while you enjoy your fresh cut. Slide on by to Fresh Cuts to pick up some stylish footwear with Caleb's Fresh Kicks collection. From Nike to Jordans, he offers the best price for quality kicks. And if you don't find what you like, Caleb offers custom work for $250. Stop over to 1224 North Baldwin Ave in Marion to pick up yours today, or Caleb also ships all over the U.S. Message him for prices and sizes. Our other people we sponsor, Steve Wood Illustrations and Ronald Morell for Mayor. Check out their respective pages on Facebook. And our other friends at other podcasts, the Culture Corner podcast, 1,000 Wives of Weird, and Rules of the Frame. Check them out on their respective platforms listed below.
All right, so we're going to start in the AFC West today with Super Bowl champions, the Kansas City Chiefs. Amazing year by them, no doubt. Super Bowl champions. A lot of people thought, Tyreek Hill's gone. What are they going to do? It's going to be tough to score points. And, they proved everybody wrong. They didn't need Tyreek Hill to do that. Not at all. They are in a great position, again, to be good next year. They have some free agents for sure. They have a lot of draft picks. They have some money. Yes, they have tied up a lot of money into Patrick Mahomes, but guess what? He's the guy. He's the MVP. He's that dude. It's well worth it. They've tied up a lot of money in Chris Jones, but he's their best defensive player by far. Their offensive line, we've talked about a number of times on this podcast that when you invest heavily into your offensive line, it doesn't matter who's back there. It doesn't matter which quarterback is back there, the elite or the non-elite, the rookie or the pro. You need an offensive line to compete, to do well. And the Chiefs spent money, spent draft picks into getting those guys. They got Trey Smith in a draft. They got Creed Humphrey, drafted him, traded for Joe Thuney, got Orlando Brown Jr. in a trade. And even Andrew Wiley played pretty well in the Super Bowl. So, the biggest thing from the Eagles' perspective in that game was we can get after Patrick Mahomes a little bit with our D-line. And whether you think the field was sucky or not, the Chiefs' offensive line did their job, not only in the passing game, but in the running game as well, and gave a lot of lanes for Isaiah Pacheco. So they've invested a lot into their offensive line, and it's worked. They didn't invest that much into their receiving core after Tyreek Hill, but this could be an offseason where they do that. They've also have invested a lot into their defense. They've had a lot of young guys. Karlaftis is young. Willie Gay's still young. Nick Bolton's young. McDuffie's a rookie. Juan Thornhill's still young. L'Jarius Sneed's still young. Jalen Watson. They have a lot of young guys on their team, and it showed sometimes, don't get me wrong, it showed that they were young, a little inexperienced, but the talent is there to keep building, to keep progressing. So 14-3 for the Kansas City Chiefs this year, 14-3. Cap space, they have about $17 million in cap space. Now, cutting Marquez Valdez-Scantling could save them another $7 to $8 million, I believe, so that could be an option. They also released Frank Clark into free agency, so I would think defensive end becomes a bigger need for them now. But Frank Clark was a very good player for them. I would just say that he was a little too expensive. He got to be a little too expensive. They released him, and I don't think they'll work out a deal with him. I'm pretty sure he'll go somewhere else. As their draft picks go, they have one in round 1, one in round 2, one in round 3, 2 in round 4, one in round 5, one in round 6, and 2 in round 7. So they have a lot of draft capital to get that defensive end or get another receiver or invest into the O-line again or a corner. Like they have a lot of options. They could even go running back. They have I don't think they have a lot of needs per se, but I mean, you're bringing back Mahomes and Kelsey, three of the 5 offensive linemen. You're bringing back Chris Jones, your linebackers, Justin Reed, L'Jarius Sneed, McDuffie. You're not losing that much. So you're losing Orlando Brown Jr. I would assume that he's going to have a big deal, a big offer, one of the first days in free agency. I would look out for a team like the Bears to offer him a massive amount of money. And there's going to be teams out there that have all the money in the world just to attack Orlando Brown Jr. and give him whatever he wants. I'm not sure if the Chiefs will be able to match that. Juju Smith-Schuster, a.k.a. TikTok boy, he's a free agent as well. They could bring him back on a short-term deal. I don't think he's going to receive that much in free agency. He had a good year for the Chiefs, but ultimately this is kind of a prove-it year for him, and I don't think he did exactly what he needed to do to get that big-time offer. Carlos Dunlap, defensive end, free agent. He's played a lot of games in the NFL. They could bring him back on a cheap deal. Then Andrew Wiley, as I mentioned him before, had a very good Super Bowl at tackle, and they could probably bring him back on a short-term deal, assuming they lose Orlando Brown Jr. to free agency. Potential targets for the Chiefs and free agency, I have Deion Jones at linebacker. I like Willie Gay and Nick Bolton, but if they're looking for someone a little bit more experienced, maybe someone a little more athletic, someone that can step in day one and produce for them, Deion Jones could be that guy. I have Patrick Peterson. I think they have a lot of young corners, so if you can get a guy, a seasoned veteran like Patrick Peterson, who's still productive to an extent, and kind of, upgrade that room a little bit, teach him some things, get a veteran in there to help him out. DJ Chark at receiver, if you're looking for a bigger body down the field receiver, assuming they get rid of MVS or Juju, I think DJ Chark could be an option, and I think Mahomes could work with just about anybody. And then I also have Andre Dillard. I don't think he'll command the money that an Orlando Brown Jr. will, but I think you could see something in the realm of like 5 years, $40 million kind of. And I think the Chiefs will have enough money to do that if they want to invest in Andre Dillard. I think that could be a great option as well. Potential draft targets for the Kansas City Chiefs. I have Keon White at defensive end. He is the DN/D tackle from Georgia Tech. Very much of a tweener kind of edge, but a guy that could help them out nonetheless. Cam Smith at corner. I think he could be there at pick 31, maybe even pick 63 in the second round. Owen Papo at linebacker. He's more of a linebacker/defensive end pass rusher. I know that their defensive coordinator loves to blitz, and especially if Spags can't get home with 4, he likes to send more. So Papo could be an interesting target there. And then Charlie Jones at receiver could be a very good option for Patrick Mahomes in the middle of the field. Mahomes loves looking in the middle of the field. And listen, I don't know how much longer Kelsey will last. Obviously, he's still one of the best tight ends in the league, maybe the best. But having another option on the inside breaking routes, slants, or just crossers along the field. We've seen that during the combine, Charlie Jones had a very good combine and ran like a 4.47. So he has some good speed as well. Again, anything that can help Patrick Mahomes here, I think, is beneficial. Now, I do a little mock draft for each team. And so my 3-round mock draft for the Chiefs, I have Nolan Smith as their first-round pick. Now, with the combine that he had, I think he might go earlier, but he could very well be a trade-up option and a very sneaky good pass rusher, incredibly athletic, experienced defensive end the Chiefs would love. In round 2, a guy like Jalen Hyatt or someone like Cedric Tillman, or someone like Tank Dell at that second-round pick, someone who can provide a lot more juice to your receiver position. I like what they have in Sky Moore, but I don't think he's really done exactly what they've wanted him to do so far. And beyond that, it's Kadarius Toney. He had a very good punt return in that Super Bowl, and we know how crazy athletic and quick and fast and his rack ability. But I don't know if they have a proven guy at receiver. And then the third-round pick, I have Sean Tucker, a running back from Syracuse, a guy who can kind of do it all for you at the running back room. Very good with his hands, very good speed for a running back. He was a sprinter in high school, I believe. So there's kind of a little mock draft for you. But I did want to talk about that receiver position a little bit. I think something that the Chiefs could do, that they have the draft capital to do and the money to do, is trading for a guy like a Cortland Sutton or a DeAndre Hopkins. I think both those guys won out. I think both those guys can still offer you like a number one receiver type of position, a guy that you can stick on the outside and win easily on slants or go routes or comebacks, guys that can get open, guys that have big body elements to their game. And then with the other two receiver positions, you do have that Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney or another speed threat, guys that can just move down the field. I think a receiver position here for the Kansas City Chiefs is a little left to be desired. So if you can go out and get a receiver that you don't have to develop, but that you can stick in there and say, go out and get open, I think that'd be very beneficial for the Chiefs. And as you know, if you've watched us or if you listen to us on Spotify, you know I like to ask one big question for each team. And my question is, what do the Chiefs need to do in order to become champions once again? And listen, I don't think they have to do that much. Like I said, tackle is a need. If Andrew Wiley and Orlando Brown Jr. are gone, defensive end is now a need with Frank Clark. You could improve receiver, corner, but I think there's 3 or 4 positions where you can improve. But even if it's not extreme improvement, I think they can go back to the Super Bowl. And it's not really a hot take. Chiefs are just that good with Mahomes and Kelsey and Andy Reid. But my offseason plan for them would be trade for a receiver like a Hopkins or Cortland Sutton. You could draft a tackle at round 1, maybe an edge in round 2, sign a corner, and you're good. Like you're there once again, I think, next year. So let's move on to the Los Angeles Chargers, 10-7 this last year, second place in the AFC West. About $19 to $20 million in cap space for the Chargers. They reworked Bosa and Khalil Mack's deals, which got them a lot of money. They also restructured Keenan Allen and Mike Williams' contract to get them money as well. So they were actually in the negative when we first started doing this. And now with those moves, they gained $40 million in cap space. One of their biggest problems last year, in my opinion, was their play calling, was their strategy for Justin Herbert. And what did they do? They went out and got Kellen Moore, who I think is actually a very underrated offensive coordinator. I don't think he should have left the Cowboys. I don't think they should have fired him. I think he's a very bright mind, a young mind, someone that can help Herbert develop and give him some easier reads, some easier play calls, something that doesn't have him have to do every single thing like a Josh Allen. I mean, I know he has Austin Eckler, but at times last year it was just these mediocre, small, short routes that really didn't do anything, and it forced Herbert to make a play after like half a second. Like, you need to give him, even though he's a great quarterback, elite arm, could be one of the best in the game someday, like, even if he is that type of quarterback, type of prospect, you still need to give him some easy reads, whether that be an easy over-the-middle kind of slant route. You need to give him a tight end that can get open easily, or a running back that has some power to his game so you can rely on the run a little bit. And I don't think they had any of that. So I think that's kind of the Chargers' plan this offseason, at least it should be, is to kind of right that ship on offense. Kellen Moore is a fantastic start to that. As for the draft picks, they have 1 in round 1, round 2, 1 in round 3, 1 in round 4, one in round 5, one in round 6, and one in round 7. So a pretty basic standard draft for you. Enough draft picks to do something with it. I think a possible cut or trade kind of guy is a Kenneth Murray. I don't think he's been what they've wanted him to be. He could be an option that gets traded. Someone like a Keenan Allen, I kind of thought that before. I don't know if they will, in fact, release him, but or trade him. But they did restructure his contract, so maybe they want him back. There's really not much else there I see in terms of trade to get more picks. Key free agents, Gerald Everett at tight end is a key free agent for them. And he was, I mean, he's their number one tight end, right? Over 550 yards, 4 touchdowns. I think they could improve there for sure. Guys like Donald Parham and Trey McKitty as a backups, I don't think they have the potential to be a number one tight end, honestly. Another free agent is a Nazir Adderley. He used to go to Delaware in college, if you remember that. Second round draft pick in 2019. I think he's had some good production in his career. I think he could be a guy that leaves in free agency and gets a decent contract somewhere else, and they just upgrade there. Drew Tranquil at linebacker, guy from Notre Dame, and Trey Pipkins at tackle, a depth tackle. Potential targets for them in free agency. Like I said, Kenneth Murray could be on his way out. I think Bobby Wagner, someone to have a veteran presence in the middle of that defense. You like what you have in Bosa and Khalil Mack and Derwin James and Asante Samuel Jr. Maybe getting a stud linebacker right there in the middle could really help your defense out. I have Eli Apple at corner, just someone to add a little more depth to your corner position. Someone who's played a lot. Asante Samuel Jr., great corner. J.C. Jackson, injured quite a bit, also not really living up to his contract, so maybe you want someone else in there. Noah Brown at receiver, another big body receiver that can just get open and win the line of scrimmage possibly for Justin Herbert. And then German Ifedi, the tackle. I like the potential of the Chargers offensive line. I do. But they were also very injured this year. Rashawn Slater at left tackle next year. That'll be good. Jamari Salyer at tackle or guard. I like what they have in Zion Johnson. He was a rookie, a young guy, and Corey Linsley at center. Like, they have potential there. They have the makings of a good offensive line. It just hasn't gotten there. They might need a couple more pieces for them to right that ship a little bit. Potential draft targets for your Chargers. I have Dalton Kincaid at tight end. If he could possibly sneak to 20, that might be sneaky good. I know what we have in Mahomes and Kelsey. I think Herbert and Kincaid could do some very similar things. That would be amazing for them. Cedric Tillman at receiver. I think he actually might be better than a Jalen Hyatt, a more all-around receiver from Tennessee. And he could be an option there in round 2 or round 3. Like we said, we like Keenan Allen. We're not really sure or sold on him. Mike Williams, very good receiver number 1, but even him, he's a little bit inconsistent at times. And then I have Tyler Steen, the tackle. Again, just someone who's played a lot of games, someone who can step in there and kind of solidify that offensive line. Now, I have a little mock draft that I do for everyone, like I said. And for the Chargers, I have Zay Flowers, round 1, the receiver from Boston College. I have DeJuan Jones, tackle from Ohio State, at round 2. And then I have Clark Phillips, the corner from Utah, at round 3. And I think Clark Phillips could be a very good nickel corner. A little undersized, not the fastest, but very good ball skills. I think if you're looking to get rid of Bryce Callahan, perhaps, or if you think he's a little bit too old, Callahan's a 5'9", 183. I think Clark Phillips is 5'10", maybe 190, something like that. So someone who has a little bit more height to him at the nickel position, but someone who can get some interceptions, get some turnovers to help out your defense. So that's kind of my 3 picks for them. My big question for the Chargers is, what can the Chargers do to get them over the hump and to get over these early exits? I think this is a big question that a lot have pondered because they have such a talented team, right? we know what they have in Herbert. We know what they have in Austin Eckler. We know what they have in Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, and the possibility of their offensive line when they're healthy. We know about Joey Bosa. We know about Khalil Mack and Derwin James, Asante Samuel Jr. I think they have a load of talent on that roster, but they can't seem to get over that hump. And honestly, I think it's coaching. I'm not the biggest believer in Brandon Staley, but they're not getting rid of him, as far as I can tell. I think maybe after next year, if they do this again, a first-round exit, I think Staley could be gone. But the first move and getting Kellen Moore, I think, is a very, very crucial step for them to not get knocked out. Someone who can just provide a little more exciting plays, someone who can provide more just ingenuity to their offense as a whole, I think is a very good step. And getting that Bobby Wagner in the middle of your defense and getting a maybe right tackle for your offense, like you need depth on your offensive line if it's going to continue to get that hurt. I think something sneaky for them is getting a solid run game. I think this could be actually the overarching answer to this question, is getting a physical run game. I love Austin Eckler, but he's not really a power runner. If somehow they can get a Bijan Robinson at pick 21 or trade up for him, I think that could do wonders for their offense. That could slow down the game a little bit. Like if they had a running game when they played the Jaguars, if they had Bijan Robinson on their team when they played the Jaguars in the playoffs, I mean, I don't know if the Jaguars would have come back. Eckler was 13 for 35 in that game. Now, you could blame the offensive line, sure, but someone that just can, I don't know, man, just like move the chains. That could have been the game. So I think the answer to the question is, what can the Chargers do to get them over the hump, is some sort of ingenuity on their offense, whether that be play calling or getting someone like Bijan Robinson who can take over a game, but also like solidify a game for you after Herbert does his thing. Like you still need a run game. Look at the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. Mahomes had a great game, don't get me wrong, but Pacheco was the guy that really took them over the top. Physical runner. Next, we have the Las Vegas Raiders, 6-11 this year. They have about $44 million in cap space. And as you know, Mr. Derek Carr is now on the New Orleans Saints, so they recoup some money from that. As their draft picks, they have one in round 1, one in round 2, one in round 3, 1 in 4, 2 in round 5, 1 in round 6, and 2 in round 7. So they have a lot of draft picks for them to possibly trade up for someone in this draft. Key free agents for the Las Vegas Raiders. We have Mac Hollins at receiver, Rock Ya-Sin at corner, Anthony Averett at corner, and Cleveland Farrell at defensive end. Josh Jacobs was franchised, and they did re-sign Brandon Parker as well at right tackle. Mac Hollins has had a very weird career, up and down career. 4th-round pick out of North Carolina, played for the Eagles. Didn't really do much. They had hope for him, but ultimately let go. Went to Miami, had some nice numbers, kind of. Then went to the Raiders and produced pretty well. They could easily bring him back if they wanted to, but I think he might go somewhere else to see if he can, alleviate his role a little bit. Rock Ya-Sin, the corner from Temple, I believe, went to the Colts. Had a pretty good, start to his career there. Then now on the Raiders, I think he could be a guy that leaves elsewhere to go back to Frank Reich, possibly, or go to Jonathan Gannon for the Cardinals, someone that he has some familiarity with. And Cleveland Farrell, just a very disappointing start to his career. Former number 4 overall pick in that draft, and has had 10 sacks in his career. Just not a guy, not a good pick, and not the kind of guy you want at pick number 4. And understand the production at Clemson, but ultimately with these high picks, you kind of want a mishmash of production and elite athletic traits. I don't think he has that. They could bring him back as a depth option, but I don't think he's going to receive a fat contract by any means. Potential targets for your Raiders, I have James Bradberry at corner. That is being talked about in circles about a potential fit with the Raiders. It's James Bradberry. Now, James has said that he wants to go somewhere where he gets his money that he deserves, but he also wants to go somewhere where he thinks he can be competitive. I'm not so sure the Raiders can be that competitive next year. So that might be interesting. That might be a deciding factor there. Jordan Poyer at safety. They have a need at safety. Jordan Poyer is demanding, and he should demand, a pretty big contract. The Raiders can definitely give that to him. Nate Herbig at guard, a guy that can play multiple spots on the offensive line. And as we know, or if you didn't know, the Raiders' offensive line really, really bad last year. I like Colton Miller. Dylan Parham was a sneaky prospect when he came out, but Andre James at center, Alex Bars at right guard, and even them re-signing Brandon Parker. I think that whole right side of the O-line is just bad. And Nate Herbig, I think, is better, and they can get him for cheaper, and I think that could be a good fit. And lastly, I have Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback for the Raiders. Jimmy G is the kind of guy I think that would go to the Raiders. Not just because it's Raiders, and they need a quarterback, but because Josh McDaniels is there. He has some connection with him, as we know. And if they're not too keen on drafting a quarterback, or if they're keen on drafting a quarterback that they don't think is ready, I think Jimmy G is a good option for them. Potential draft targets for the Raiders, I have Will Levis at quarterback, a very up and down kind of prospect. High ceiling, low floor. I think he could be the fourth quarterback drafted if we're assuming that the Panthers at number 1 get their guy, the Texans at 2 get their guy, and the Colts at 4 get their guy. At pick number 7, they're left with Levis probably. I think Levis would be the last quarterback taken. However, they could also trade up with the Cardinals, and I would put that out there. The Cardinals might want that number 1 overall defensive prospect. You're right. They might want their pick of Tyree Wilson and Will Anderson and Jalen Carter for sure. But if there were to be any move, it would probably be the Raiders up to number 3 or the Colts up to number 3 instead. So just watch out for that. Luke Whippler at center. I think he could be a very good center for the Raiders. Not sexy or not nearly athletic as some centers, but just a guy that's stable, that can pass protect and run block and get to the next level a little bit. A good signal caller, a guy that can help out your quarterback. I think Whippler would be a good center for them to get. And then Zach Evans at running back. This is all kind of assuming Josh Jacobs didn't come back, but he is. But I still think running back could be an option for them. As we know, running backs don't have that long of a shelf life. So Zach Evans, a guy that's a physical freak, physical specimen at running back. I believe TCU and Ole Miss. He played both schools there. Didn't really have the production that you wanted him to, but nevertheless, I think he could be like a 4th rounder for them. In a little mock draft, I have Will Levis at pick 7. Again, I think they could trade up for him. I have Steve Avila at guard. Again, more need on that interior offensive line for sure. And then Devin Achane at running back. The Raiders love their speed. They always do. They have not deviated from that. And that little mock draft, I like for the Raiders, but still, they need some help on defense. I think interior D-line, they need some help. I think linebacker, they could use some help. I think corner, they could use some help, especially if Rocky Sin's gone. And someone opposite Trayvon Moreg as well. Raiders have a lot of need, and getting the quarterback I don't think is going to solve their problem. It actually might make them worse next year. So Raiders have a lot of needs. The big question that I have for the Raiders is, what should the Raiders do post Derek Carr? I think we kind of answered it, but ultimately it's improve the offensive line. I like Devontae Adams there, but he doesn't have his buddy anymore in Derek Carr, and that's kind of why he went to the Raiders. Doesn't make much sense, but the offensive line and interior D-line is definitely where they should go first. Like, get your quarterback, get Will Levis, great, but then just start getting guys on O-line and D-line, man. Like, you need to. That is the first building process, especially if you have a young quarterback. Like, you need to be able to win different ways. I like some of the weapons that you have. Devontae Adams and Darren Waller and Josh Jacobs. Like, those are good. But the priority is offensive line, defensive line after your quarterback. And again, I know they have need at corner and linebacker, but I think first, before anything, is getting the offensive line, defensive line figured out, getting your quarterback and Will Levis possibly, and letting McDaniels see what he can do in a couple of years with Levis. I'm not the biggest believer in Josh McDaniels. I'll say that now, but we'll see what he can do with a young quarterback. If he gets Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback, I think it's still another down year for them. So ultimately, what do they do after Derek Carr? Invest in your O-line, invest in your D-line. And, I think that's just step one in I think, longer rebuilding process for the Raiders. Lastly are the Denver Broncos. They are fourth in the AFC West at 5-12. Just a horrible year. Laughable, almost, I would say. Definitely laughable. Russell Wilson just wasn't him this year, and getting Nathaniel Hackett from the Packers, just horrendous. It was really bad to watch. This is one of the teams that I just don't know how they fix it. I mean, I know they got Sean Payton. That's a big thing. They got Sean Payton, and they have some money. They have about $33 million, but it really seemed like Russell Wilson was dead in the waters last year, and just slow and inaccurate and not on time. I like some of the pieces they have on defense, but it just seemed like it was a bad move getting Russell Wilson, trading away all those picks. Oh, and guess what? You traded away more picks for Sean Payton. So I don't think they have a great strategy right now. I think they're hoping that Sean Payton will just make Russell Wilson back to Seattle. Russell Wilson, make him an all-pro. And I don't know if that's going to happen. I mean, it's a lot for them to do in one offseason to make them a playoff contender. They don't have that many draft picks, 2/3, 1/4, 1/5, 1/6, and 1/7. They lose guys like maybe Dalton Risner, Draymond Jones. It's not looking that bright for them. Their offensive line anyway is not great. Courtland Sutton might win out. They might trade away Jerry Jeudy. Javonte Williams is coming off an injury. Their linebackers are Alex Singleton and Josie Jewell. Randy Gregory, I don't think he did that well. 2 sacks last year. They paid him a bunch of money. Kareem Jackson's old. Love Justin Simmons and I love Pat Surtain for sure. But, after those two guys on defense and maybe Baron Browning, their defense, even though it played well at times last year for sure, they're losing some guys. Some guys are older. And their offensive line is a mess, and their receivers don't want to be there. It's a lot. It's a lot to work through, but we're going to try to work through it here. The Broncos free agents, like I said, Risner, Draymond Jones, Deshaun Williams at edge. Potential targets for them, I have Jawan Taylor at tackle from the Jaguars, someone that maybe could play right tackle for them. Ashawn Robinson, I think Draymond Jones is going to get a lot of money somewhere else, is what I'm seeing. So getting someone who can replace that, and Ashawn Robinson. And Kyle Fuller, I believe he was a Bronco at one point already, but Kyle Fuller at corner, I think, would be a good option to give some depth for the Broncos. He played in 2021. He's had about 20 picks in his career. He's a little bit older, but I think that might be a good move as well. Potential draft targets, I have DeJuan Jones at tackle, Jack Campbell at linebacker, and Mohamed Diabate at defensive end. I'd love a big physical tackle for them. I'd love another linebacker for them. An edge is something you always need. And a little mock draft for the Broncos, I have Darnell Wright at tackle in round 3. I don't think he's going to end up sneaking there. But another name I'll throw out is Blake Freeland. And then Demarion Overshown, a linebacker, also in round 3. I think he's someone that could provide some more athleticism to their defense. But as you're seeing, as I'm talking, they don't have a lot of money. They don't have a lot of draft picks, and I think they have a lot of needs. Now, something that could happen here, they could trade away Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, and recoup some draft picks. They already released Graham Glasgow, Ronald Darby, and Chase Edmonds to get up to that number, $33 million. The big question that I have for the Broncos is, what do the Broncos have to do to get Russell Wilson back on track? It's a lot, man. It's truly a lot for the Broncos to do in one offseason. I mean, they might need another running back if Williams is hurt. If they trade away these receivers, guess what? They're going to need receivers. They need to get their offensive line healthy. They need to probably find a whole right side to their offensive line. They need some interior help. They need a linebacker. I think they need another safety, maybe another corner. Like, I think they have a lot of needs, and I don't know if they can do it all in one off season. I really don't. It's a lot of work for them to do, and I guess my answer to the question is I don't think they can right the ship at all in one off season. I don't think they can. But to get Russell Wilson back on track, I think Sean Payton can do a little bit of that just himself. I think Sean Payton's most definitely has to be better than Nathaniel Hackett. He has to be. Just so some more ingenuity on offense, some more consistency on offense, more smart play calling, more teaching. I think all of that will help Russell do a little bit better next year. But I think, again, the priority is offensive line. I gave you that Jawan Taylor. I gave you DeJuan Jones. I gave you Darnell Wright. I think getting more offensive linemen will just automatically help their team as a whole. All right, so guys, that will do it for our AFC West offseason preview. Thank you for joining. Thank you for sticking around, giving your support. And as always, you can find us on Facebook or Twitter, Spotify as well. We're very active, I would say, in all 3. If you have an idea for a show, we'd love to hear it. If you want to hop on, we'd love to have you. Or if you agree or disagree with anything that we said, obviously start a conversation with us. We'd love to talk to you. So stick around, guys, for another episode for an AFC offseason preview, and we'll see you on that.